Welcome to my workbench. Right, let's get into doing something. We'll start with a clean rag here. Cleanish. I have used it before, but nothing terribly dirty. Okay. Obviously, a car stereo. It's out of a VW Passat 2013-14. Actually January 2014. This has the 4 buttons on each side, eject CD player. Unfortunately, one or more of these buttons has come off of here. It's not simply just a case of putting it back in and clicking it down, because it won't stay there. So we have to do a little bit of a deeper surgery on this unit. Just going to put this button to the side for the moment. Just out here, where can we see it? Yeah, out here. And we have to pull off. I only know this because I had to change over the radio, and the radio, second-hand radio that I bought, had this button missing, hence why the button is missing off of this unit. So I had to figure out how to replace that button. So through trial and error, for an hour or so, I realized we have to remove this bezel here, this gloss black bezel. We then have to remove the cluster of buttons here. Once we've removed that, we can then reattach this button into its place. We can replace the button cluster, the bezel, and this will work again. It will function as a button. The radio won't work because that's a deeper problem. So let's get into it on this lightly raining, overcast day. I'm going to go and get some tools now. Let's see. What shall I use? I've got this fabulous collection of plastic trim removal tools. Great, because they're usually softer than the material you're working on. So what we want to do with these is find the right one that will allow us to manipulate and release the fastenings of this bezel. I'm going to nominate this shank type tool, as all these other ones are a little thick from the ends. Too thick. This one, perhaps this one also, that's nice and thin on this end. Too thick. Too thick. I'm going to replace these back into the toolbox so that I can keep order and not lose anything. And so the bench space does not get too cluttered. So, I also have one or two of the you probably shouldn't use these tools. I call them you should not use them, because we're working on plastic, which is quite soft. This is metal, which is quite hard. I have a slight preference for this one. As you can see, it's squared. This one's a little rounded, so I'll put the rounded one to the side. We can have the square one here just in case things get a little difficult. So where we're going to start here, I'm going to remove a little of the dust. We can put this shanking tool into underneath the bezel here and just see if we can find where it's attached. I do this by probing and twisting. As an alternative, if you do happen to have nails, those nails can fit under here. This bezel has been removed a couple of times already, so it is a little loose and you can actually get your fingernails under here. And what I can feel is that it's quite loose across this section. So too is it on the top. So what that means is I can feel that it's actually fastened in the corner here. So perhaps I can manipulate this, there we go, just till I get a click or until it comes loose. Oh, look at that, that came out far easier than previously. But that is, like I said, because I have removed this a couple of times. What you'll note is that there are small amounts of what looks to be an adhesive across this section here. Is there, yeah, a small amount just here. Looks to be maybe a spot or two here also. But generally our main fastening points are in these corners here, 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 and here. There are also small tongues which fit into the grooves here and here, and even smaller ones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 across the top, which would 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 match up with these. So now that we've removed that, we will inspect it, making sure none of these tongues have snapped off in the removal process. If they have, we need to retrieve them from in the groove or wherever they may be and adhere them back to the bezel for reinstallation. Now that we have this section here, a lot of these radios, as I mentioned, this is a 2013-14, so we're talking about something in the order of 12, 13 years old. And if it's never been removed before, you'll find quite a lot of dirt build up in these areas underneath the bezel, especially on the bottom of the screen, sometimes on the top as well. But as we know, gravity affects all things mostly, and it will build up the dirt at the bottom of the screen behind the bezel in this section here. You'll want to be cleaning that out before we return the bezel to its original position. Okay, now we've exposed the button cluster here. This is a little bit of a difficult removal, especially the first time, as it's all the components are quite tight together. Now what I've found, I haven't used this tool, I'm going to try and use this tool. I think it's not quite fine and pointy enough. That's where the do not use tool comes in. However, I'm finding that this is a good tool in this position, even though it is a harder material than the material we're working on, and we could potentially, theoretically and practically cause damage to the plastics here. We have the grace of this bezel covering those. Now, for ease of removal, I'm going to use this tool, and I'm going to use it selectively and carefully. I will not, for instance, use it on this side because that is in full view. I could and may use it here and here, as once again the bezel covers that area. So I'm just going to go ahead and try to remove this. There's a little bit of flex in this, you can see, and I want to get in there. Perhaps I'll put a fingernail in there to hold it back while I lever it upward. I may even use this tool for such a thing. It's better than my fingernail. I'm going to lever that upwards. It is a little awkward, but you'll know when you get it, because this button and this button, when you do it the first time, they will click and release. So now that this one has released, and I have a little space under here, I can actually get my do not use tool in, wiggle it from side to side, put some purchase on it, and that's the sound I'm looking for. The clicking releases this side of the cluster. We can go ahead and do that to the other side now. As I've mentioned before, I have removed this particular cluster a couple of times, so it is somewhat softened. It has been softened and does release a little easier than what you may experience if you're doing this yourself. When we remove this, we will need to lift this side slightly higher than this side in order to slide it out, because as you can see, there are protruding pieces here. Those protruding pieces are attached to the moving section of the button when it moves. There we go, the button, the inner button is going up and down. This will affect that, and they move together when it's all in place. See? Up, down, up, down. And this is what we want to see. Now we need to, when we get to this stage, it becomes apparent why you can't just push the button on top in its position and have it click into place. It's this button, the inner button, moves as one piece. This needs to connect to that, but it hinges. The button hinges on this side, sitting on this edge. So when you push down evenly, it depresses this button, but not this edge. So the button itself cannot click back down unless you hold, excuse me, unless you hold the inner button upwards. Now I'm going to use both of my index fingers to do that, and both of my thumbs to push on the left and the right hand side of this button onto the inner button. To hear that one little click, and that now works as intended. Perfect. What you'll note is you have in here a rubberized receiving pad, which gives the buttons their nice firm but supple feel when being depressed. This here. Is what our buttons here use to activate the function assigned to each button. Now, reverse process of this, remembering the protruding pieces here, means that this side of the button cluster needs to be vertically lower to slide in first. There is a little bit of a balancing act here because we need to make sure that the rubber receiving the rubber button receivers are not caught up in the buttons in a way that would compromise the functionality. Now we push down on the right hand side. Sometimes we may need to pry this out a little in order for this to pass. It's a fine line, and sometimes we need to lift this a little in order to make this process happen. But you see, by lifting this, putting even pressure on here, this will then simply click back into place. There we go, it feels good and even all the way around. Now we depress each button to make sure they feel as they should. We compare it against the buttons on this side, and we note that they are in fact the same. This is perfect. This is exactly what I would want in the process of doing this. Now, this is the point in time which we would go to our plastic bag of rags. We would pull out a fresh rag, such as this lint-free cloth. We would use it to remove the dirt and dust particles from around here, all the major stuff. We would then find ourselves a clean, soft bristled paintbrush. We'll clean up all the detailed areas that we couldn't reach with I may like to use a smaller brush than this, and that would be fine. I have this one on hand, so that's why I'm using this one. You could equally go to your toolbox perhaps I won't do that. I was going to present to you something similar to this, but with the slightly firmer than paintbrush nylon bristled toothbrush cleaning item, which I got from the auto store. However, mine is covered in grease right now, so I certainly would not recommend using that. Once we are if you have firmer dirt deposits that you would like to remove. You may need a firmer brush, you may need some cleaning solution, and just work through that until you're happy with the cleanliness of your stereo before you continue. You would also take your brush to the back side of the bezel, clean it down thusly. Perhaps you might like to wipe the front also. You are going to get more fingerprints on here as we reinstall it. Now placing it back in its original position, like so, we will then look for this sound to know that we have located it into its home position. As a final step, we'll take the clean rag and we will wipe down this beautiful, unblemished, gloss black bezel. Buttons. Turn dials. And face. It doesn't have to be in that order, but any methodology is a good one. Methodology, do it methodically, is what I mean to say. Now, with that process complete, you will have functioning buttons. If you like that, let me know. I could go deeper into this. Not that I know what I'm doing, but I could go into a full disassembly of this. Let's see how we go.